Now, I contacted you to discuss the case of the death of Corey Micciolo, did I not?
Yes.
Okay, and did you review materials that I sent you with an eye towards rendering an opinion as to the cause and manner of death of Corey Micciolo?
Yes.
Okay. And did you prepare a report of your findings and opinions regarding Corey's death?
I did.
Now, did you perform the autopsy in this case?
No.
Although you did not perform the autopsy, were you able to develop an opinion as to the cause and manner of death?
Yes.
Do you know who did perform the autopsy in this case?
Dr. Regassa.
Okay. Did you review the autopsy report prepared by Dr. Regassa?
Absolutely, yes.
And do you know when that was prepared?
Yes, that autopsy was done 14 hours after the death of Corey.
Okay. Did you also review medical records from IV Pediatrics?
Yes.
Did you review medical records from Community Medical Health Hospital?
I did.
Did you review medical records from Jersey Shore Medical Center?
Yes.
Did you review medical records from Southern State Medical Center?
Yes.
Did you review what's called histological slides?
Yes.
And what are those?
Those are glass slides that most people come in contact with in school, where very thin slices of tissue are placed on and can be viewed under a microscope in order to increase the ability to see what's present. And that's commonly, those slides are commonly made in after autopsies of the various tissues that are seen with the naked eye, because they give more information when seen under very much higher magnification.
Did you review the autopsy photos?
Yes.
Did you review any police documentation?
Yes.
Okay. Did you review a 33-second video that was taken on April 2nd, 2021?
Yes.
Okay. Did you review a photograph of Corey asleep in his father's arms on April 2nd, 2021 at approximately 2:02 in the afternoon?
Yes.
Did you review a Dr. Andrew report?
I did.
Did you review a Dr. Feingold's report?
Yes.
Did you review a video of a treadmill from a gym on March 20th of 2021?
Yes.
Did you review an additional video from the same gym taken on March 29th, 2021?
I did.
Okay. Now, do you have an opinion after you reviewed all the material in regard to Corey's cause of death?
I do.
Can you tell the jurors what that opinion is as to Corey's cause of death?
I think that Corey's cause of death has been confused because of extensive injuries caused by the CPR process. That I agree with a part of Dr. Regassa's cause of death that indicates injuries to the heart and other organs, which I think is are typical vigorous CPR injuries. And I don't agree with that part, but I do agree with the inflammation and sepsis part of his diagnosis. The inflammation and sepsis part of Dr. Regassa's diagnosis refers to inflammation in the lung and the finding on culture of bacteria in the lung that could cause pneumonia and sepsis. So I think my cause of death is different than Dr. Regassa's, in recognizing, in my opinion, that the injuries are all CPR injuries. Nobody can live for more than 2 minutes with a 1.5 inch laceration of the heart, for example. And I do agree that the most likely cause of death is the lung inflammation, the bacterial capture of what the bacteria was, and his symptoms, the symptoms of shortness of breath, cyanosis, means a bluish color due to low oxygen, finding in the hospital that he had an 85% oxygen level, which is very low. All of us here would have about 97% or higher. The high white count, 29,000, mostly polymorphonuclear cells, which are the cells that respond to a bacterial infection. And then what I also base my opinion on is the CAT scan finding of pneumonia also present. So I think all together, the most likely cause of death was a very severe, rapid pneumonia. There are other causes that could also occur. Sudden, unexplained death in children syndrome occurred, like sudden infant death syndrome that causes baby deaths, and it's not clear what the cause of death is. Same thing with children 3, 4, 5, 6 years old can die suddenly, cause of death being the heart stops, and not knowing the reason for that, and that's called sudden unexplained death in children syndrome, which occurs many hundreds of times a year in this country. And there may be other types of infectious diseases that sometimes don't get caught on autopsies, but they're all infectious diseases, some affecting the lungs, and I just feel that the injuries to the lung, liver, and mostly the heart are just typical vigorous, especially vigorous CPR, which is the very nature of what CPR does. It squeezes the heart 100 times a minute.
I'm going to get into that, Doctor. Did you form an opinion as to the manner of death?
Well, my opinion would be that the manner of death, for all the information we have, is natural.
Okay. Now, there are 5 manners of death, right?
Yes.
Okay. And natural is one of those 5?
Yes.
Okay. So you keep talking about CPR. Let's just get to the meat of it. What is CPR?
CPR refers to compression of the chest to force the heart to pump blood. As we sit here, most of us, our heart is pumping blood around 60, 70 times a minute. And that causes a squeezing of the whole heart. If the heart stops and CPR is the only way to get it started again, chest compression, which is severe enough to press on the heart to pump blood, is the only means of keeping the person alive. And that occurs because the sternum, the chest bone, has to be pushed down far enough to squeeze, to touch the heart, to go right up against the heart and squeeze it against the spine bones behind. So every compression during CPR physically squeezes the heart against the spine, and that will then push out the blood, which is essential because if it stops going out for 5 or 10 minutes, you wind up with brain death, and so that has to be done, and it's done vigorously, but it can also cause damage. Now, when I was chief medical examiner in New York City, the idea of EMS CPR was developed in New York City, 1979, with the realization that CPR causes damage, but the alternative is the person's going to be dead. So that the risk is always taken that CPR can cause damage to the heart, to the liver, to the lungs, and to bones, fracturing bones and sternum, but that those injuries are compatible with life, whereas if the CPR wasn't done, the person would be dead because of the heart stoppage.
So it's more beneficial than dying.
Yes, the only way to keep it, but depending on how vigorous the CPR is, you get more injury. General studies show that about 60% of CPRs that don't revive the patient, 60%, so there are injuries. Most of them are bone injuries, fractures, but in about 35% are heart injuries, bruising on the heart. From what I calculated, CPR was done for about 49 minutes. Usually it stopped after about 18, 20 minutes. There was concern about Corey. It was kept up for 49 minutes at 100 compressions a minute, to get the heart pumping blood. So that's over 4,000 impacts that heart had against the sternum and the spine, and it is understandable how these injuries would occur. And that is why my opinion is that what's being described, and I also found it of interest that Dr. Gregor, when he did the autopsy, refused to put that down on the cause of death. And he includes in the autopsy, under heart, question mark CPR, right in the autopsy report on the first day. He was concerned about CPR causing all the heart injuries, and it wasn't until 14 months later that he changed it to homicide. Now,
Do children, like a person of my height, I'm 5'6", about 190 on a good day, would CPR be done differently to somebody like me than to a child?
Well, yeah, there's a difference in how you do the CPR to persons as they get older. The older we get, the more brittle our bones become and the more breakable they are. And the child, like Corey, the ribs are all bendable. They're like cartilage in our ears, and so they're very easy to push down. But the bottom line it's got to be pushed down about 2 inches down to squeeze the heart against the spine so that the blood is pumped out of the heart. And if that isn't done, then the heart, and that's done usually until a normal sinus rhythm occurs. And that often happens, especially in people in hospitals, that the CPR be done, and usually within 5, 10, 15 minutes, you get a normal pulse back, and then you can stop the CPR because now the heart is going back to pumping blood normally. But if the heart doesn't pump blood normally, it's kept up, and in this situation, it was kept up much longer than usual.
So you said much longer than usual. What would be normal? What would be usual CPR on a 6-year-old child?
Well, normally, if the heart doesn't respond by developing its own normal sinus rhythm, the CPR will stop. That is, it's fruitless usually after 20 minutes.
And how long was CPR conducted for?
49 minutes.
And that's unusual. Now, can people die from CPR?
Well, not usually, because they're already dead. When the CPR can only be started after the heart stops. So once the heart stops, the person is dead, and then the alternative is, can we revive the heart to start beating again? And CPR sometimes starts the heart again after 5 or 10 minutes. But if it doesn't restart the heart, it becomes of no value afterwards. But it isn't that the CPR caused the death. It's just the fact that the heart does not restart beating that means the person is dead.
Can you explain to the jury how the heart works?
Well, the heart has 4 chambers, as we learned. The blood comes in through a vein into the right atrium, goes down into the right ventricle, and gets pumped up through the lungs. It's an amazing thing. I mean, every time I do an autopsy to see how this is done and how each cell in the body knows where to go is a miracle of the body. But it comes, so it brings back the blood that's used up its oxygen, goes back into the right ventricle, pumps it into the lungs, where the carbon dioxide is removed and oxygen is replaced on the red blood cells. And then it goes into the left atrium and the left ventricle, and that's the workhorse of the heart, the left ventricle, which then pumps the blood to every cell in the body. Every cell in our body gets oxygen all the time, or else they're going to die. So that the left ventricle is the main pusher of blood around the lung. If the heart stops, then after about 5 minutes, without any brain flowing to without any oxygen going to the brain cells start to die. It's amazing. The brain is about 25%. No, the brain uses about 25% of all the oxygen, even though it's about 2% of the weight of the heart. So the brain is the organ that needs oxygen the most. So when the oxygen is cut off from the brain for more than 5 minutes, then brain cells start to die, and they don't rejuvenate. Some cells in the body, like the liver cells, will reform, but not in the brain, permanent damage. And that's why you wind up sometimes with vigorous CPR, that after the brain dies, then the other organs of the body are okay, because if they get oxygen, the heart and all the other organs can do okay with less oxygen. And you wind up with people who wind up in bed and in hospitals for long periods of time, but they're able to be taken care of, but they're unable to function because brain death is permanent.
Now, you spoke about the blood and how it goes in and out and gets reoxygenated and comes on back. Is there like an electrical system that the heart has?
Yeah, well, the electrical system of the heart has to do with the rhythm of the heart. The way the heart functions is that there's an electric circuit, about less than 1%, 98% of the heart is muscle, and about less than 1% is nerves. And the nerves cause the atria and the ventricles to function. If something goes wrong with the atria, you can get atrial fibrillation. And atrial fibrillation means there's something wrong with the electric circuit in the heart, but is not very important because the ventricles have their own rhythm, and it's the ventricles that are the workhorses. And so the blood goes into the atria, and it's pumped down by the electrical stimulation into the ventricles, and then by their ventricle stimulation, they get pumped out to the body. And every cell in the heart has nerve cells that go to it to make them function. And if the heart stops beating, it means that the electric circuits have stopped functioning, and they have to be restarted. And usually, not usually, but getting oxygen back to them sometimes causes them to restart, and that will restart the normal heart rhythm.
Now, doctor, there's been a lot made about an injury to Corey's heart through this trial. In the medical examiner's report, I believe it's described as a 1.5-inch laceration to the heart. Do you have an opinion as to how that 1.5-inch laceration to the heart occurred?
My opinion is that laceration occurred from continuous CPR, compression of the heart, between the sternum, the breastbone, and the spine that happens with sufficient compression of the heart. That the heart has no place to go between the sternum and the spine, the thoracic spine, so that injuries are common in the heart, and lacerations of the heart are not the most common, but can occur.
So now, if somebody was to sustain a 1.5-inch laceration to the heart, would that be something that could kill them?
Absolutely.
And how long would it take a person to die had they received a 1/2 laceration to the heart?
Well, the heart would stop beating within a minute or two. That is, the heart needs the electrical circuits in the heart to be functioning, and not only does a laceration cut through the muscle, but also through all the nerves in that area, and which would stop the electrical circuits in the heart.
So the laceration sustained in this case would have killed a person within minutes?
Yes.
Would it have been a bleed out or an electrical problem?
Well, not in a bleed out, because there doesn't have to be a breakage of if there's a breakage of the outer blood vessels, they're very small capillaries on the outside, you can get bleeding. So there would be a few blood vessels that are damaged on the outside of the heart. Those would bleed, but they bleed slowly, and if somebody dies within 2 or 3 minutes, it would bleed very little. If the person lived for a while, there'd be a slow leakage of blood, a slow beating of blood that would fill up the pericardial sac, the sac in which the heart is encased, so that if they were bleeding from the heart in any way, there'd be a lot of blood in the pericardial sac, whereas there wasn't here, and that's because the heart stopped beating right away. When the heart stopped beating, that's the end of blood coming into that sac.
Now, if that injury had occurred at 2:02 in the afternoon up until 3:43 in the afternoon, that's when Mr. Gregor arrived at the hospital with Corey, would he have been dead already?
He couldn't live more than 2 minutes with that kind of injury. Yes, absolutely.
Now, can a laceration to the heart caused by CPR be considered a blunt force injury?
Yes.
Did Corey die from CPR?
No. CPR didn't restore life in him, but he didn't die from it.
Now, Dr. Andrew came here the other day and he testified at great length about something he abbreviated, he called them polys. What's the formal name of them?
Polymorphonuclear white blood cells. There are a number of different immune cells, and polymorphonuclear cells are all part of the white blood cell category, and they're the ones that respond to infection.
So, can you explain to the jury why Corey had an increase in polys?
My opinion certainly is that the increase in polys indicates that there was a infection in the heart, infection in the body. The infection can be anywhere. There was an infection in the body, and that Dr. Ragasa showed by his culture that was caused by Staphylococcus aureus, by that particular bacterium, by doing the culture at the time of the autopsy.
So let me ask you, well, I'm going to get into autopsies in a minute, but let's stay with the CPR for a second. So Dr. Andrews also testified that it was his opinion that the injury to the heart and liver were not caused by CPR because of the presence of the polys. Do you agree with that opinion?
No, what that would refer to is that often after an injury, the body's white blood cells start coming to an injured area. However, the polys are abundant in the bloodstream, so that what Dr. Ragasa, I looked at the same slides. The only polys that were in the heart were polys that were in the bloodstream. They weren't polys that were responding to the injured muscle, which is an indication that the injured muscle and death occurred very quickly.
So when you say the injured muscle, the heart's the muscle?
The injured heart muscle, yes.
Okay. So now let me ask you this. Can you tell the jury what exactly an autopsy is?
Well, an autopsy consists of many parts. Most people are familiar with the external and internal examination that occurs at the time of the physical autopsy. There are many attendant studies that occur. Photographs are taken to identify whatever items of significance. Toxicology is commonly done on appropriate blood or tissues as needed. There are DNA studies that can be done. There are microscopic studies that are done. X-rays are common. In fact, the New York City Medical Examiner's Office had a large room that was an X-ray room, as many medical examiner's offices have, right next to the autopsy room to take X-rays of autopsies being done, especially of babies, because there are many injuries in babies, like in the extremities, that are not usually part of an autopsy, but that show up very nicely on X-ray. So what I say, so that a part of the autopsy is taking the X-rays and microscopic slides, And more recently, since I left New York City, CAT scans have become prominent in medical examiners' offices, those that can afford them, because studies have shown that one CAT scan that can do a digital autopsy can perform the work of 2 medical examiners, so that they're becoming more, there's a need for more medical examiners. A lot of doctors don't like to do medical examiner work, so that they can be very, very helpful. When we die, everything's the same when we die. Bones, skin, muscles, organs are all the same. What changes is the chemicals in the blood, the enzymes and the electrolytes and all. There's a change in the chemistry of the body after we die, but not of the organs, so that CAT scans after death give the same and sometimes better indication of any damage or injury that there is to an organ than the autopsy itself.
Doctor, I have S58, which is the state's picture of the heart. Let's get back to the heart for just 1 second. Would this help you show the jury what the laceration is and how it would affect the heart?
I haven't seen that.
Okay, take a look at it.
Yeah, I've seen this before.
All right, thank you.
There's a lot of white spots on this, but I see that there's an area of injury here.
Can you maybe hold it up and point it out to the jury?
Well, I could circle it with something if you'd like,
Well,
but
they don't like their evidence touched. So they've already crossed
there's
that.
right near the bottom, the apex of the heart, there's an injury that I guess was shown to the jury in the past. It's hard to see the color differentiation.
But that's the 1.5-inch laceration that we're
Yes.
talking about. And that's the injury that you would have died almost immediately from.
Yes.
Okay. Let's get back to the autopsy. You just discussed that the autopsy is more than just a dissection of the body, right?
That's correct.
There are additional tests that are called for, right?
Yes.
And you just discussed one of those tests is a CAT scan, right?
Yes, that's more recent because it's expensive for medical examiners to get a CAT scan and the necessary precautions and area to put the CAT scan. But a number of medical examiners' offices around the country have installed CAT scans.
How about X-rays?
X-rays, very, very helpful, and that's the kind of radiology I'm familiar with, because when the medical examiner's office was built in 1960s, the room right next to the morgue where the autopsies are done was the X-ray room, because it was used so frequently as an assist in the performance of autopsies.
By the way, if you know, didn't Dr. Andrews work in that particular office that had the building with the X-rays right next to it?
That's my understanding, yes. That was after I left.
So, in addition to X-rays and CAT scans, could they also request medical examiner as part of the autopsy request any lab tests like a culture or blood work or anything like that done?
Well, cultures are part of doing an autopsy. If the doctor thinks there's an infection, it's important to try and find out what the infecting agent is, so as a public health measure, to know what is causing the infection. So that's why cultures are done. And special tests can be done looking for chemicals in the blood that might be specific for certain natural diseases that have abnormal components in them. That can be done.
So what exactly is a person that's a medical examiner doing when they perform an autopsy? What are they doing?
Well, the medical examiner is trying to determine cause of death and aspects of the death that can be helpful to the family. There are genetic things that come up that should be looked for, and so that the family will have the ability to know how a loved one died and what effect it may have on the children and the grandchildren, the different kinds of genetic diseases. In addition to that, most autopsies are just for information for the family. When deaths are unnatural, homicide, suicide, accidental deaths, they have a great societal impact. So often the society is informed of certain kinds of deaths. Certainly any homicide is always reported to the district attorney's office and to consult with the district attorney's office. If there's a disease that can be contagious, we've gone through the COVID thing where so much attention was paid to medical examiners and autopsies. It's important to know the extent of a contagious disease from a public health measure. So the medical examiner's office is not just a criminal justice type agency, but it's also more so a public health agency that is meant to inform public health officials of the latest reasons that injury and death occur.
So is the medical examiner who performs an autopsy an integral part of the investigation?
Of the criminal, in general, yes. Be it public health or be a criminal justice system, yes, the autopsy becomes an important part of that investigation.
So would you say that the medical examiner is like the detective of the dead?
Some have been referred to that, yes, that they're dead people. Quincy was a dead person detective.
So now, we had a nice infectious disease specialist come in here, and she gave some testimony about CAT scans after death to the lung being of no value. Do you agree with that opinion?
No, they are of value. Some doctors may know that CAT scans are done on dead people, so certainly CAT scans are only a rather modern device, so that old-timers may not know that CAT scans are used in post-mortem investigations.
Can you see a pneumonia on a CAT scan?
Yes, you can see evidence of a pneumonia, yes.
Okay. Now, doesn't the body decompose after death?
With time, it decomposes, yes. That takes time.
How much time?
Well, it depends. It takes, in hot weather, within a few days, a dead body exposed to hot weather for a few days can start to decompose.
Now, during COVID, we saw pictures of refrigerated trucks filled with bodies. Do you know why the bodies were placed in refrigerated trucks?
Yes, in all medical examiners' offices have refrigerated areas because placing a body in refrigeration stops the decomposition. Bacteria don't function below 39 degrees Fahrenheit. So in general, medical examiners' offices have refrigeration units for the bodies that come that run around 36, 37, above freezing, 36, 37 degrees Fahrenheit. So at that level, decomposition stops.
Was Corey's body refrigerated after he died?
Yes.
Corey went through a vigorous autopsy, am I correct?
Yes, an extensive autopsy, yes.
And that was performed, do you know who performed that? Was that Dr. Regassa?
Dr. Regassa did the autopsy.
And he was the medical examiner from Ocean that did that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let's discuss some of the findings that we see on an autopsy, on Corey's autopsy. Was there a CAT scan done on Corey's autopsy, during Corey's autopsy?
CAT scan was not done during the autopsy. What happened was when the medical examiner's office was notified about the death of Corey from Southern Ocean Medical Center, the medical examiner investigator responded to the hospital. It so happened that the investigator was a physician, a Dr. Larkin, who was a family care physician. And when he went there, he looked through the chart, was concerned about possibility of a pneumonia or infection, so he requested a CAT scan. New Jersey doesn't have a CAT scan facility, so if the body came to the medical examiner's office, a CAT scan couldn't be done. So that Dr. Larkin requested a CAT scan while the body was still present in South Ocean Hospital, and that was done there before the autopsy was done.
So the CAT scan of the lung was actually done prior to the autopsy?
Yes.
Do you know how soon after Corey passed that CAT scan was done?
It was done within a few hours after. The CAT scan was done within a few hours, and I think that the autopsy was done about 14 hours after death. So it would have been done 2 hours perhaps after death.
Now, did that CAT scan reveal anything that you used to form your opinion?
Yes, it revealed that there were certain changes in the lung on the CAT scan that suggested pneumonia.
What were those changes? Do you know?
Yeah, filling of alveoli, the air cells with fluid.
Did the CAT scan also reveal extensive air space disease identified through both lungs, however worse on the right?
Yes, that's what I was referring to.
And what does that mean? What is extensive airspace disease?
Well, that's an indication that that's what pneumonias look like. The air spaces are supposed to be filled only with air, the alveoli. And when fluid gets into the air spaces, that causes a pneumonia. So that description that you described, it doesn't prove, but it's an indication that there's a pneumonia present. And I think that was what Dr. Larkin's opinion was.
Now, the CAT scan also revealed something called diffuse multifocal alveolar airspace. Is that the same thing that we just discussed, or is that something different?
Pretty much the same.
Okay. And that is the same, gives you the same indication, right?
Yes.
Now, I don't remember if we went through Dr. Feingold talking about the CAT scan, but I believe we did. Do lungs collapse after death?
No, not initially, not till decomposition sets in. The lungs don't function after death, if the heart stops, so that whatever air or blood is in the lungs stays there. When decomposition sets in, then the bacteria themselves can make changes in the lung that cause other abnormalities in the lung that can be confused with pneumonia, but this CAT scan was done right away before there was any decomposition.
And Dr. Feingold opined that a CAT scan done of the lung after death, that the lung would need to be reinflated in order to get a better view. Is that true?
No, that's not true at all. But I think Dr. Feingold, when Dr. Feingold was training and all, there weren't such a thing as CAT scans. And I think that Dr. Feingold doesn't appreciate that CAT scans are now used and can be very helpful in the autopsy process. And there's a name, digital autopsies are part of what happens at an autopsy nowadays. That wasn't present when she was exposed to autopsies.
Now, in addition to this CAT scan that was done during after Corey's death, during the autopsy, does the medical examiner also go through all of the particular organs in a case?
Yes, the autopsy includes examination of every organ in the body, period.
And that's how we have a lovely picture of the laceration to the heart. Right?
Yes.
Okay. So, did Dr. Ragasa, the ME who did the autopsy, did he look at the lung?
I'm sorry, I got it.
Take your time.
Yes, he looked at the lungs.
Okay. And during Dr. Ragasa's report, did he find that in the lung he found mild to moderate congestion with occasional mild peribronchial, non-specific, acute, and chronic inflammation?
Yes.
And can you tell the jury what that means?
Well, acute inflammation means fresh infection in the area. And that's what that's the only place he uses the word acute inflammation. And he puts that in the cause of death. On his cause of death, he first gives the injuries to the heart, lungs, liver, and then says acute inflammation and sepsis is the second part of his autopsy findings. I agree with the acute inflammation and sepsis being the Staphylococcus bacteria that he identified. I think that part I agree with, but I think the first part is all made during CPR after the child died.
Okay. What is sepsis?
Sepsis is an infection through the body.
So, in addition to the CAT scan, in addition to Dr. Ragasa's findings of the actual lung itself, were there any other studies that were ordered by Dr. Ragasa with respect to the autopsy, such as a culture?
Well, what Dr. Ragasa did at the time of the autopsy is he took a culture of the lung. And the only reason he would do that is he wanted to identify the organism that was causing the inflammation in the lung, the pneumonia. Pneumonia is a form of inflammation. And he did that, and the culture, if it's not done properly, can contain lots of bacteria, but when you have just the one bacterium present, that's evidence that it was a proper culture, and that's the only organism that was causing the inflammation in the lung.
So now, during an autopsy, we know that there's going to be a dissection, right?
Yes.
We know that the medical examiner is going to pull out each and every organ and examine it and weigh it, take a picture of it, right?
Yes.
Is a lung culture normally done on every single autopsy?
No.
When would a lung culture be done?
If the medical examiner is trying to identify the agent causing the inflammation.
So, the lung culture, what did it show?
The lung culture showed Staph aureus as the bacteria that was present in the lung that Dr. Ragasa went to the trouble to take a sample of.
What is Staph aureus?
It's one of the common drugs around that when it causes infection in children can lead to serious consequences, but it's around us all the time.
Would a blood culture be good at finding pneumonia?
Blood cultures in people who have pneumonia, blood cultures find the bacterium about 5% of the time. So blood cultures used to be widely used when I was in medical school, but are not so widely used. And some hospitals have stopped doing blood cultures at all because it's positive in a very small percentage of the cases, and it itself can lead to a lot of extraneous diagnoses and work if it's incorrect.
So then a lung culture was ordered because it would be the best way to determine whether or not there was actually any bacterial or disease or infection to the lung?
In the bloodstream.
Now, besides the CAT scan that showed pneumonia, and besides the actual looking at the lung that showed signs of infection, and besides the lung culture, we're good?